Hey Credit Warriors, Credit Shifu here, and recently my attention was drawn to an article by CNBC in which they label the Capital One Venture Card as the best travel credit card of 2018. I know, right? Kind of funny. The Chase Sapphire Reserve was the runner-up. So it's kind of amusing. But in this article, I felt that it was either written by someone who's not that into the credit card points and miles game, or perhaps they are into it themselves, but they wrote it from an angle of trying to appeal to people who are kind of new, who are kind of beginners, all right? And it did make me think that the Capital One Venture is quite a good card for someone who's new to the game. So we're going to do a video about why the Capital One Venture is perhaps the best travel credit card for beginners. Let's get started. So the Capital One Venture Card is what I call a Tier 3 card. It's got a $95 annual fee. It does have a big sign-up bonus. It gets rewards. That $95 annual fee is waived for the first year though, and this is always something I would recommend for cards for people who are kind of like just getting started, okay? So maybe you've built credit with Capital One, you've had the Capital One Platinum, you perhaps had another cashback card like the Discover It or whatever, and you're at the stage where you're ready to apply for something a little bit better, a little bit sort of like mid-tier card, but you're not really sure about like committing to it, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have that much experience, so you don't really know how much value in rewards you're going to get back, so you want something that's not going to charge you up front, so you go for a card that has a waived annual fee for the first year. So I'd say that's a really good aspect of this card for people who are kind of beginner, kind of new to the game. It doesn't ask them for money up front, so that's a big plus from me for that first point. Now in point earning, the Capital One earns 2 miles per dollar on everything, okay? So there aren't really any award, bonus categories, except for one small one, which we'll talk about in a minute, but mainly it's just 2% back, 2 points per dollar on everything, and these points are just valued like at 1 cent per point, okay? And they can be redeemed for travel. We'll talk about how they're going to be redeemed in a moment, but first we'll talk about the one bonus category on this card, and that is hotels.com, in which you earn a whopping 10x back per dollar, all right? 10 points per dollar, or it's about a 10% return, because each point is valued at 1 cent. The points guy in an article also argued that since hotels.com has its own rewards program, which is 1 night free every 10, so that kind of translates to a 10% reward. Anyway, if you use this card and their rewards program, staying 11 nights per year, you get 20% back. Now, I don't know, I don't think you could really argue like, oh, it's 20% back, like just full stop, okay? It's kind of like considering on the condition that you stay this number of nights and blah, 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 you can kind of say it's 20% back in value, but at least it's 10%, and then if you make use of their rewards program and you do stay over 10 nights, you have the option of getting a free night, which is definitely an added bonus. But you could do that anyway, with or without the card. This card just gives you that extra 10% back. And this 10% back deal on hotels.com is going to be going on until January 2020, okay? So that's when it expires. Maybe they'll renew it, or maybe they'll renew it at 5% or whatever, you never know. I guess it's kind of like a promotional thing for hotels.com. It's like advertising for them, but you've got at least another year of it if you get the card now, at least. Okay. All right, now we'll talk about how you redeem for travel. So there's actually 2 ways. You can either book travel through Capital One. I understand they have a kind of travel portal thing that you can use your points to book travel. Or you can use what they call the travel eraser, okay? Or actually, no, they call it the purchase eraser. And this is kind of like a signature benefit of this card because it means that you can actually book travel on any website through any company or whatever. You don't have to book through Capital One. You can book directly with an airline, with a, taxis, Ubers, like directly. And then afterwards, you can use this, you can use your points to erase that charge. And points, again, are just valued at 1 cent per point. So for example, for a $200 ticket, it would be 20,000 points. And so that's very, very flexible because there are no blackout dates. And this is something I do think is good for beginners because beginners often, they don't want to get really involved with like checking through multiple websites, different airlines to find award availability, and then transferring points across and having to phone airlines and be put on hold and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. It's actually quite a lot of work to get a decent award. It can be, So this travel eraser thing, purchase eraser it's called, I think it's a great way of doing it for beginners. Okay, so that is something I would definitely recommend for people who are starting out. And there's one more way you can redeem your points, and that's for cashback, and you actually get 0.5 cents per point. So that's the worst deal. Okay, I wouldn't recommend that. Since you're getting 2 points back per dollar and then redeeming it 0.5 cents, so that would make it, basically 1% back per dollar. So that's worse than you'd get on other cards. Now, the current sign-up bonus on the Capital One Venture, there's a public offer of 75,000 bonus points, but it is quite a high spending requirement of $5,000 in the first 3 months. We actually still have access to the earlier offer, 50,000 bonus points for $3,000 in spending in the first 3 months. That might be easier for some people. We'll put that offer below. If you're interested, you can check it out. And just a couple more perks. It does give you the global entry / TSA pre-check credit, which is good for a travel credit card. No foreign transaction fees. That's in keeping with Capital One across the board. They don't have foreign transaction fees. It doesn't give you lounge access or anything like that. You wouldn't normally expect that from a $100 fee card anyway. Possibly you might expect like a couple of lounge passes. That would be the maximum you'd get, but the venture doesn't provide that. Now, one more thing about the Capital One Venture is they have airline transfer partners coming in December. They're going to be opening that up so you can transfer your points across. And it'll be 1.5 points per 2 points. And there are 12 airline transfer partners. We've done a video about this before, so if you want to check out that other video, I'll put it at the end of this video. You can learn more about it. But basically, this opens the card up and makes it a bit more future-proof for people. Because when you're in, getting travel rewards credit cards, okay, booking through portals or whatever, or just erasing travel purchases with points that are worth 1 cent a piece, you don't get the best value out of it. It's useful if you are traveling with a family or you don't want to deal with blackout dates or whatever, but there comes a point when you want to do some business class or first class redemptions and you want to, transfer to partners. And Capital One Venture now has that. You should note, though, that the CNBC article was written before they knew about this, so it came before that. They thought it was the best travel credit card, even without these transfer partners. All right, guys, let's look at the competition now. So the card earns 2 points back per dollar on everything, all right, apart from that one hotels bonus category, which isn't you're not going to do your majority of your spending in that category. So it's a 2% card, basically, for travel. All right, obviously, if you redeem for cash, it's lower. What else is a 2% card? The Citi Double Cash, and that's 2% on on anything, right? You could use that 2% for travel, you could use it for something else. But when we compare it to the Citi Double Cash, you soon realize that Citi Double Cash doesn't have a big sign-up bonus, whereas the Capital One Venture does, so that's definitely a big plus point over the Double Cash, even though you can only use the points for travel. Then we could also compare it to the Chase Sapphire Preferred, which actually is very similar now. They're very similar cards. So the Chase Sapphire Preferred, it has the travel portal where its points are worth 1.25 cents. Now, it's interesting, the Chase Sapphire Reserve earns 2 points per dollar on travel and dining, and then 1 point per dollar on everything else. So when we're looking at the value of the points, if we say that maybe half your spending is in travel and dining and half of it is in just regular spending, grocery stores, whatever, so on average, you perhaps will earn about 1.5 points per dollar with the Sapphire Preferred, okay? Now that's a very, very generalization, just an example, but let's say on average it could be about that, 1.5 points per dollar. And then when redeeming through the portal, you get an extra 25%, okay? So 25% of 1.5 is 0.375, so it takes us up to 1.875, okay? So the points, when we redeem for airfare, we're getting per dollar value of about 1.875 cents, whereas with the Capital One Venture, you're getting per dollar value of actually 2 cents per dollar spent when you redeem on their portal or using the purchase eraser. So the portal side of it, actually the Capital One Venture is better than the Sapphire Preferred. You wouldn't think, but it actually is. With the transfer partners, Capital One Venture, they haven't come in yet, so we can't really, look at it, but we will say that there are no US airlines in there, which is a little bit of a shame. Chase has classics like British Airways, United, etc. However, there are some interesting ones in the Capital One Venture, like Ever Air, it's great for going to Asia. You also have Etihad, which you can actually book American Airlines domestic business class, first class for 25,000 points. That's pretty good as well. So it is definitely more competitive than it seems on the surface. People often dismiss Capital One cards because they're kind of like starter cards or whatever. And I would say that this is definitely a good card for beginners, and it might be a good card for your first Travel Rewards credit card, especially if you've already built a relationship with Capital One. So guys, let me know your thoughts about it. Are you excited to check out the new transfer partners that are coming in December? If you want to learn more about the card, you can click the link below and have a look, and obviously if you do use our links, it helps out our show, so we thank you very much if you do. Please subscribe if you're new, give this video a like, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.